Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Bicycle Legs Discovers Rush. And today I have another very special guest, Mr. Jim Benner from RushFans. Jim, wonderful for you to join us. Really pleased to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
And I'll get you to introduce the viewers to the album that you've picked for me, a little bit of
Sure.
background behind that album, and most importantly, why you chose this particular album for me.
Okay. Yeah, sure. All right. So the album that I chose is Caress of Steel, and I have the vinyl here. Hard to get
Nice.
my face and the vinyl in here, but I really like the vinyl, especially on this one because you
Oh,
open it up and
gatefold.
it's got the
Yeah.
lyrics and it's got the pictures and it's always fun. When I was a kid, I used to just sit there on the floor and just look at it and everything. But this is Rush's third album that they've released, and it is the second one with their new drummer Neil Peart, because the first album had John Rutsey on it, but it's the first album that is the true collaboration of the band, because on Fly By Night, right here, there was a few songs that were written before Neil had joined. So Caress of Steel marks the first really true collaboration of the band from a pure album perspective. And I chose it because, well, that's one reason, but another reason is I don't think this album gets that much recognition or that much love from the Rush community, and everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, I love it, I love it, I love it. Well, and I know there are a lot of people that do, but I think overall it kind of ranks a little bit lower. Like if you rank all their albums, it overall ranks kind of low on that. And I think it is a great, adventurous, progressive album where the band is really starting to stretch and take some chances and come into their own. So I actually love the album.
Yeah. Well, no, fair
Because
enough. But it's interesting because, like, from what I've gathered from being in a couple of Rush groups on Facebook and that sort of thing, is this is an album that seems to divide the fans. Like, the people who like it
yeah,
love it, and the people who don't like it really don't like it.
right, yeah.
So I've got a friend, Skipper. Hi, if you're watching. He runs a wonderful record store here called Stash. And he and I talk about Rush a fair bit because I've been telling him about this series and so on and so on. And I told him last weekend that the next episode in this series was going to be Caress of Steel. And his reaction to that was, oh, that's going to be hard work. So it's an album he likes, but he finds the album is hard work. Like, it's not an easy listen. So it was an interesting one to get into. So I was really looking forward to getting into this because of the sort of, real polar opposite reactions that people have to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
they do.
I mean, yeah. So the album starts off with Bastille Day, which is a really high energy rocker to start the album. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Lyrics about the French Revolution. The opening riff of this song, it's got to be one of their best riffs. I absolutely love that riff, and it goes throughout the song. Yeah. It's great. It gets a little mellow in the sort of middle section between the second and third verses before it then launches again into a really great Alex Lifeson guitar solo. It's a straight ahead rocker, and it's a great album opener. In fact, this might be a controversial take. I like this as an album opener better than Anthem, which the last album I did in the series was Fly By Night. Yeah, so very good. I actually like. I mean, Anthem's a great song. Don't get me wrong. I love Anthem, but I actually like this even better as an album opener.
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic album opener, and just like you said, it's really a big rocker. And I mean, these guys are coming out playing, very adventurous. The recording style and quality on this album, I think, is great. Neil's drums sound so punchy and so clear. Geddy's Rickenbacker is just this biting, growling sound that I love. And Alex's guitar is just nice and crisp in the recording, which makes it so great to hear everything. And, you know, just like what'll happen, and you probably notice in a lot of the Rush albums you're going to listen to, especially when you get later and later in their career, Alex's guitar solos are extremely melodic, and he's not one of these guys who does this, you know, crazy fast, you know, shredding riffs every time he does a solo. He's extremely melodic, and the first half of this guitar solo is very melodic. I think it's a great opener, and I believe that this song opened up the live album All the World's a Stage as well, which is a cool live album too.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
awesome.
I've actually made that that observation as I've gone through the series, that Alex is not a shreddy guitar player, and that I like that about him. He is a very melodic soloist. Even when he does play fast, it's still melodic. It's not sort of swarm of bees kind of shreddy.
Yeah.
So he's a very tasteful guitar player. That's what I like about him.
He is very much so.
So the next song is I Think I'm Going Bald. Now the title of this song made me think this was going to be a silly song. It really did. But actually the lyric is a rather interesting young man's take on the aging process.
Yes.
And musically it's another quite straight ahead song. It's, you know, pretty sort of four to the floor. It's a mid-tempo sort of song. Parts of it even sound a bit like early Kiss to me, you know, just the guitars and that sort of thing. But I must say, in reference to something you were saying with Bastille Day, much, much better produced than any Kiss album from this era. Because those Kiss albums are all
true.
You know, got some great songs on them, but they sound like they were recorded in a tin can. Whereas even at this stage, Rush had a really good production sound. You know, they were already working with Terry Brown at this stage, weren't they? And he's a really good producer.
Oh,
so
fantastic!
Yeah,
he's fantastic. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, this one is great. It kind of it's funny because, you know, Alex, you know, he starts the guitar riff and you think, oh man, this is just going to be a rocker, but it's got like a little bit of a funkiness and a little something different to it, right? That you can't, at least I can't just put my finger on it and say, oh, it is definitely that style, like the reggae influence that they had, you know, sort of later in their career, like on Signals and things like that. But it has a bit different style in it, which I think it makes it unique. The music, I think, is fantastic, and I agree with you on the lyrics. I mean, while the title makes me giggle, you know, because it's kind of funny. Yeah, it's about, you know, kind of retaining your youth. And, you know, now as I get older, because when I first heard this I got into Rush in 1982, and I was however old I was then, 14 or whatever it was. I'm 55 now, and, you know, listening now and thinking back on it, you know, especially like I love the line, you know, but even when I'm gray, I'll be gray my way. It's like, well, yeah, you know, so yeah, I think this is great. I think the song kind of gets dismissed a little bit because, you know, I don't know, maybe people don't listen to all of the lyrics as much, and I don't know why they dismiss it, but I think it is a harkening back to youth and how you're going to age.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting lyric, and I picked up on that same last lyric that you did about, you know, going grey my way. I really like that idea, and I suppose I'm sort of like that. I'm in my early 50s now, and I've still got the long hair, so you know,
that's great. That's awesome.
But yeah, and then we get into Lakeside Park. Now you're talking about things being a little bit funky, and I Think I'm Going Bald. I've really found a bit of a funky sort of groove to this song, really cool groove that I like. Again, a fairly musically straightforward song. You know, these first three songs are all sort of, you know, 4.5 minute kind of songs. you know, the lyric is sort of a reminiscence of, you know, sort of fun had in a seaside holiday town, which is,
Yep.
you know, a little bit different from the lyrics that I'm used to on some of the other Rush albums, but it's still a really good lyric. I have to say, though, Neil's drumming is on fire in this song. There's some absolutely brilliant fills in this song.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely love it.
This is actually my favorite song on the album. And I am a drummer. So I used to sit down and, play this, the song, the intro to it just for fun and everything, and play the drum part. And yes, I agree with you. Neil is on fire. His drum fills are great. I even wrote in my notes, great drum fills. and like you're right about the lyric and what it makes the lyric makes me think is sort of a youthful, fun summer.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I think of with this lyric. But yeah, I absolutely love this song. I think it's great.
Yeah. And I love the mellow bridge toward the end too. Really, really like that. But I had a question for you. In the lyric, they refer to the 24th of May. Is there a particular significance to that date?
I don't know. I probably should know this. I'm not sure off the top of my head. The other Rush fan guys are going to probably watch this and go, dude, it's whatever it is, but I can't think of it. I'm sure there is a significance to it. And I don't think that is actually the Bastille Day, is it?
No, that's in June, I think, or July.
In June, okay, yeah. I'll have to look it up. I'm not sure of the significance of the day. Somebody will probably mention it in the comments when you.
Yeah, absolutely. Please, in the comments, let us know. Love to know. So then we get on to the Necromancer. And the very first thing I said in my notes here was, now things start getting adventurous.
Very.
Yeah. And I had another question for you. Do you know who does the spoken word parts in this song?
Yes, it is Neil. Neil Peart does the spoken word part. And of course it's through they're doing something to his voice. I don't know if they're like they're deepening it and putting some effect on it. So it, if you've heard him speak a lot, you'd be like, oh, wait a minute, that kind of sounds like Neil. But if you haven't heard him speak a lot, you would not know. But it is Neil doing the spoken word voice.
Oh, okay. So we're back into fantasy storytelling here, which I've sort of previously experienced on albums like Fly By Night and A Farewell to Kings.
Yeah.
Really sort of moody and atmospheric in the sort of Into Darkness section, with some very Floydy guitar from Alex. It reminded me of sort of Dave Gilmour playing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. He's another awesome, tasteful, melodic guitarist. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Dave Gilmour's the sort of guitarist who'll play 3 notes where another guitarist would play 20, but he'll make all 3 of those notes count.
Yep. And they're beautiful. Every one of them.
And then we get we get into the harder rocking second sections, like Under the Shadow. It's with some great unison playing from the band. Like you've got the guitar, the bass, the drums all playing the exact same rhythm. That's always very, very difficult, I've noticed. So, that always, I mean, again, all of these albums, they show what consummate musicians they are. And, to think this is only their 3rd album and they've only been sort of recording for a year and a half at this stage.
Yes.
Is really quite mesmerizing. And Geddy's sort of holding the melody down with the bass, while Alex plays a couple of really great guitar solos, like 2 different ones in the sort of 2 sections. And they're very different. They're nothing like that sort of Pink Floydy kind of first guitar solo in the first section. But then they're not the same as each other either. They're quite different guitar solos. Just showing his versatility. It's absolutely mesmerizing. And then we get into the 3rd section and our old friend Bytor is back. from
Yes, he
Biter
is.
and the Snow Dog.
Yes.
For the Return of the Prince section, which is now, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, Jim.
No, no, go ahead.
I found this third section was actually quite poppy. Like it had a very poppy sort of melody to it.
Yeah.
And I just felt overall this song is a really great musical journey over sort of 12 minutes or thereabouts. And it's probably, I'm not certain on this yet, but it's probably my favorite song on the album.
Wow, really? That's great. There's a couple other people who I've heard say that the Necromancer is their favorite. And I think it's kind of maybe one of the strangest songs that Rush has recorded, because you've got the spoken word part, and then you've got the three different sections that are very different from each other. You're telling a story, bringing back a character from the previous album that was evil and has now turned good, and is fighting for the good and things like that. But I mean, I think the different sections are amazing. I mean, I love how, like, Into Darkness, it oscillates between frantic and mellow, kind of goes back and forth there. And then Under the Shadow, I wrote a couple things about the guitar solo there too. And the end is the end of that section is pretty wild. And it's interesting you say that the Return of the Prince, it sounds kind of poppy. I wrote down in my notes that the music in this part is less dark and seems almost celebratory, which fits the lyrics. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I agree. It's kind of like it sort of feels, happy. It kind of feels like at the beginning part of the song, the music is dark, the lyrics are dark, the travelers are venturing into, the underworld where the Necromancer is. They're unsure of things and they're very cautious. And now at the very end, everybody's happy. And that's the music kind of fits that, in my opinion. But I think this is a great adventurous song. And you're right, they've only been recording for about a year and a half or so at this time. And for them to write something like this and to take that chance, to put this on an album where at the time they're like, oh man, we need a radio hit. We need a radio hit. Like every band is like, we need a radio hit. And these guys are doing a 12-minute 34 second little epic. I think this is kind of really showing their creativity, their with songwriting and with playing, and their desire to be their own band and not to be somebody else's band.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do tend to go for the more adventurous stuff. I'm a prog head from way back. I love the really, really sort of proggy stuff, and I'm into big epic tracks. So yeah, I like it when they do that. The only thing I will say about this one, and I would say it about the Fountain of Lamneth as well, is at this stage, their epics, they do feel a bit like individual songs that have been stitched together. Like they do have a little bit of that. They don't flow quite as well as they would on even like the longer tracks on, say, A Farewell to Kings. I feel like those long tracks flow a lot better than these ones do. These ones do still feel a bit sort of bitty, if you know what I mean. Like the bits that they've stitched together.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think when we talk about the Fountain of Lamneth, it'll be kind of obvious to both of us, or to everybody, that both of us sort of feel that way. And if I compare it to something like Hemispheres really flows, almost so the fact that it's like, okay, where's my lyric sheet? Okay, when do they really go to this next section? Whereas on some of these ones on this album, it's like, oh, this is the next section, right?
Yeah.
Still, I think there's still fantastic songs as a whole and the individual parts, but I agree with you that they don't seamlessly flow from one section to another.
Yeah. So now we do get into the Fountain of Lamneth, which is a sidelong epic to close out the album. You talk about going for radio hits. Well, here's a sidelong epic instead.
Yeah. I prefer that actually.
Yeah. It starts off with In the Valley, and it has this sort of it starts really quietly, and then you get this, like, after this acoustic guitar and vocal intro, it kicks into some really crunchy riffing, which is really cool. And then you get into a really fast proggy section alternating with quiet verses, and it would sort of go back and forth between those.
Yep.
And I love that. And then part 2, you sort of get into, it's basically an excuse for a drum solo. And I've got to say, I absolutely love Neil as a drummer. I think he's an outstanding drummer. I am glad that this drum solo is, well, I described it in my notes as mercifully short, because even the best drummers in the world, I don't want to hear them just playing a drum solo for 10 minutes. It's just, it just doesn't appeal to me. I know there's some people who love it, but it's just not nice. And, 1 or 2 minutes is my limit with drum solos.
I'm actually with you on that, and I am a drummer. And I even asked my son about this. I'm like, dude, do people really like to hear these long drum solos? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, really? Because 2 or 3 minutes for me, and it's like, okay, that's cool. But let's get back to the music. I mean, there's drummers who, I mean, I agree with you. I think Neil is fantastic. He's if I have ranked my drummers, he is always number 1 on my list, and I think his drum solos are interesting, but overall I prefer shorter drum solos.
I
agree.
And then we get into where this song gets really bitty, as we were talking about earlier, because basically after sort of the second section of this song, it basically comes to a complete stop and then starts again.
Yes.
So you sort of get into that, and then you get the No One at the Bridge section, which is sort of really moody. I'm an absolute sucker for arpeggiated guitar parts, and I absolutely love the arpeggiated guitar that Alex is playing. The ding 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 ding.
Oh yeah,
absolutely love playing like that, and he plays it really, really well. And then he plays another brilliant solo, which leads into Panacea, or Panacea, as Geddy pronounces it. I've always known it as Panacea.
Panacea.
But it's an absolutely gorgeous ballad. And people who've watched my series so far will know that I've had a very mixed record when it comes to Rush ballads.
Okay.
Like, a couple of them I've absolutely loved, but a couple of them have been sort of like the weak point on the album for me, depending on which album we're talking about. So this one, though, is absolutely gorgeous. Geddy sings in his lower register here, which with these early albums, he doesn't do a lot of singing in the lower register, but he's absolutely beautiful in the lower register in Panacea. Absolutely wonderful. Love it. Then you get Bacchus Plateau, which is sort of mid-tempo rocker. I could see Bacchus Plateau actually having, how they would sometimes with these sort of epic prog tracks, they would snip out like one section and release it as a single or release it to the radio. I could absolutely see Bacchus Plateau having that treatment done to it. I don't know if it did, but it probably should have, I reckon. It would have been a great radio track.
Yeah. It would have. Yeah, I think this one, I don't know if they did that with this, but I think Bacchus Plateau or Panacea can stand alone as their own tracks. I think either of those could do that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that those are the 2 tracks where only Geddy gets writing credit for the music.
Yeah.
But absolutely. And then you get the Fountain, the last part of it, and it bookends the piece. And again, I'm a sucker for those big long epics that are sort of bookended.
Yes.
You know, because the Fountain has the same sort of music as the In the Valley section. You know, it has those really frantic verses and then those sort of moody, proggy verses that come after it. And it alternates between the two. I mean, lyrically, this whole song is sort of, again, a tale of a journey, much like the Necromancer. But this one's a lot less sort of fantasy based. This one's a little more grounded in reality, as it were. It's less fantastical, shall we say. Yes. It's a really absorbing piece. And it mostly works well. The only things is those sort of stops and starts where it feels like they are sort of individual songs that have been stitched together. But overall, it's a really good piece. And I've got to say, I've really enjoyed this album.
Yeah, great. Awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd put it like in my absolute favorites for Rush, but it's definitely one that I want to go back to and listen to more. And it's definitely one that I really, really enjoy. I like the way how you get sort of those sort of basic, more sort of straight ahead tracks at the beginning of the album. And then you get the really sort of adventurous tracks at the end of the album. It's a great way to sequence the album, I think.
I think so too, because I think if they would have put like the Necromancer somehow in before, like or mix the order of that side one a bit and had Necromancer first or second and ended with a shorter one, it would feel weird, right? It would feel strange. And I know on some recordings, like on some cassette tapes, the order of the different parts in the Fountain of Lamneth are switched around. Yeah. So it's really hard to figure out, well, what's the true order? But like on the album and the way that you described it, that is the true order because it follows, within the valley, our hero or protagonist, being born and sort of growing up. You get to Didex and Arpets, which is the drum solo piece. And he's more like of a teenager. And Neil has described that piece as kind of being an argument between the teenager and their teachers and parents. He mentioned that the Didex and Arpets are teachers and parents for that. So he's kind of thought it that way. One thing that I noticed on No One at the Bridge when I was listening to it today, which it hadn't really stuck out for me before, but it really stuck in my head this time, is that Alex is playing a very clean guitar, right? So either acoustic or electric, but it's extremely clean. But when he gets to the solo, it's a very distorted tone. So it's a very different tone on the solo versus the rhythm part that he's playing. And I think that's excellent. That's so brilliant. And I'm sure it was deliberate. I bet. And you're right. Panacea is a beautiful ballad. It's just gorgeous. And one thing that I thought about with the song, which I actually love this epic. So there's a couple of Rush fan guys who know how much I love this epic. I really love this epic. And like you said, the different sections are not tied together seamlessly. But when you think about it, this is the first sidelong epic that they've written and produced. Right. And it's only the first of 3, right? So then they had 2112, which kind of became their breakout, and that kind of flows very, very nicely. Then they had Hemispheres, which I think is brilliant. But the interesting thing to me on the Fountain of Lamneth is that the ending of it, the very, very ending, when Geddy's repeating the lyrics of, I'm in motion, I am still, I am crying. He's repeating those lyrics that he did at the beginning. That is very similar to the style of the Sphere, which is the last part in Hemispheres.
Yes.
So I don't know if they took that kind of idea when they wrote Hemispheres, or if they were just like, oh, let's just do that, or if they thought about what they did back here. But I thought that was interesting. I've never really thought that about it before.
Yeah,
but I've thought that. Yeah, and I think this is such a great tune. I think this is such a great album. I have a friend who plays guitar in a Rush tribute band, and he's like, he's like, "Hey man, what you do today?" I was like, "Oh well, I listened to Carissa Steele when I was working." He goes, "The whole thing?" I go, "Yeah, the whole thing." He goes, "Man, you are more hardcore than me." And he plays in a Rush tribute band.
Yeah. But it's definitely,
So
look,
yeah,
I've got to say, this album is not, as my friend Skipper said, I don't know if I'd quite describe it as hard work the way he did, but it's definitely not an easy listen, especially after those first three tracks. But it's a
yeah,
rewarding listen.
yes, that's a great way to put it. That's a really great way to put it. It is.
Yeah. So
It
thank you
really
so
is.
much, Jim,
Yeah.
for recommending this album for me. Really
Well,
appreciated
thank
it, and
you.
thank you for doing the show with me. Please,
Thank
all
you.
my viewers, go and check out RushFans. There will be a link in the description. Jim appears there regularly, along with several other people who've been on the program. Um, I've been so pleased with the support that I've had from the RushFans community. It's been absolutely wonderful. I mean, I was already friends with Todd and with Tim from Tim's Vinyl Confessions, and
Oh yeah, I know Tim.
and thankfully, Todd introduced me to you guys. So thank you to Todd for that. Absolutely wonderful. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to look at some other episodes from my Bicycle Legs Discovers Rush series, there's a playlist for those. If you want to look at some of my studio albums ranked episodes, there's a playlist for those. If you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, I also have a playlist for those, so please do check those out. If you want to follow me on
Awesome.
social media, I'm at Bicycle Legs on Instagram and Twitter, and I now have a dedicated Bicycle Legs Facebook page. Please give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.